this, but to enlarge a presentation or a video window, you can just simply double click on it. The preferred browser is Google Chrome. So I'm whispering that. You didn't hear that, Mrs. Wilson. And if you are posting on social media, feel free to take screenshots, take pictures, and tag us with hashtag Constellations Summit, and I'll put that in the chat as well. And if you are require an attendance certificate for any types of credits with your school system, you can email the inquiry to gtconstellation@gatech.edu. I'm gonna put that in the chat as well. Okay. I want to go ahead and introduce, colleague, partner. I hope I can say friend as well, but we've been together for like a few years now. But
we have.
Yes, this is Mrs. Tracey Wilson. She is the regional manager in our section, the Southeast section, and she works for Microsoft TEALS program. And what it does is it helps to partner industry volunteers with classroom teachers to co-teach CS courses, as well as help the teacher learn the contents. And I will say I actually was a member of the program. So it is a very, very, very good program, very, very good, great idea that the TEALS organization has developed. And without further ado, I give you Mrs. Tracey Wilson. We doing okay?
Yeah. Can you see my slideshow? I think it just killed it again.
Right. So see, we do the same thing, but it was working.
I promise you all that I am usually better at this than I seem today. So I'm going to get it to work. Promise. How about now? Hey, there it is. Hey. Yay.
So are you able to see the chat and the video and things like that as well on your end?
Yeah, I think I have it sorted out. It's going to look a little crazy because I actually have my Surface sitting in front of my bigger screen with a presentation on it. So when y'all start going, she's not looking at the camera, it's because I have so many screens going.
Hey, you're not
so, hi, everybody. I promise that I am not normally this confused. You can ask Mr. Barashango. I generally know what I'm doing. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit today about specifically the TEALS program, but I'm going to do some generic sharing too about how you can get content support inside your classroom. And for those of you that are not familiar with the TEALS program, I'm going to do a slide presentation on it. I am one of those people that very much likes interaction while I'm talking. So feel free to throw some questions into the chat. Mr. Barashango has actually been part of the TEALS program, so I've invited him to throw things at me while we're talking, ask questions, anything like that. So just for your knowledge, a little background on myself. I was a classroom teacher here in the state of Georgia for 13 years. Before I started with the TEALS program, I taught computer science down at the College and Career Academy in Coweta County, the first one. So I was at the Central Education Center. I do have a background in computer science, unlike most of my colleagues at the time. So I kind of was like the unicorn of computer science teachers 13 years ago. So anyway, the TEALS program, TEALS stands for Technology, Education and Literacy in Schools. It's a big mouthful, so we call it TEALS. We're a fully funded program. Oh, it's not supposed to do that. My computer hates me today. Sorry. So TEALS started in 2009. We are a program that helps build teacher capacity, but we also want to help students at the same time. So we have a community of teachers and volunteers All of our volunteers are industry professionals or students hoping to be industry professionals. We offer curricular resources, and we also offer training for the volunteers and the teachers. We want to make sure that we're helping support your schools. I know here in Georgia, we want to look for pathways. So we're not looking to help build just a singular class at a school, but to help build a pathway or a program. So the challenge that's motivated the TEALS team is that we know that 90% of parents want their children to learn CS. 86% of the students that have been surveyed in rural and small towns believe that computer science is important for their future. But only 55% of only 45% of schools offer it. 55% of schools do not offer CS. So a little bit about TEALS by the numbers. This past school year that we just finished, we had 625 schools. We served over 21,000 students. The volunteers in our organization came from 750 companies. The thing that I really love being female and in the tech industry is that 35% of our students this year were female, which is above the national average, which is great for me because I am old enough to remember being the only girl sitting in all of my computer science classes in college, and also being asked if I was the one taking notes and getting coffee at my first job in the computer field. So we're making progress. We're making steps to get that way. So the numbers here in Georgia specifically, oh, that's the wrong slide. Oh, well. Okay, so there was supposed to be a specific slide here on Georgia. Somebody's been monkeying with my program again. We had 26 schools this year in Georgia. We served over 750 students just in Georgia. We had 38% of the Georgia students were female. We had 2 all-girls schools, so that helped the Georgia numbers a lot with our female representation. And we served about 30 classes because a lot of our schools are on blocks. So even though we only had 26 classes, 26 schools, some of those schools taught the class twice. Why am I going in the wrong directions? So here's a map of the different locations that we have schools in across the nation. For this coming year, we will be adding a few dots down in South Florida. We're going to be picking up 7 schools in Miami. So we're growing more here in the Southeast. What I'm really happy that we've seen happen here in Georgia is that we're starting to spread out from the Atlanta metro area. We have 3 schools this year in Columbus, Georgia. We had 2 schools in Walker County, which is just south of Chattanooga. You can be in Chattanooga in 10 minutes from one of those schools. And I live out in Carroll County. So we did actually serve 4 schools in Carroll County, which is on the west side, almost in Alabama. It's always a positive when you get your children's schools involved. Mr. Barashango is laughing because he knows I worked on that for about 4 years before I got my hometown school involved. So we have several models and support for our teachers. This has changed a little bit since Mr. Barashango left. We now have an alumni program. So the people that have been through our program for several years but are ready to branch out on their own and don't need as much support now can go into our alumni program where we give them some, lighter support, but we still have them in our community, and we have our volunteers and forums available for those teachers that are out handling the content on their own. Most of our teachers start in co-teach model. This is for teachers with little to no experience in computer science. So maybe you're transitioning from art, maybe you're coming from business, maybe you're coming from math. TEALS doesn't care. We will help any teacher that is interested in learning computer science learn the content, because we think anybody with a valid interest and the determination to learn it can teach it. So what we do at the co-teach model is we try to find 4 volunteers to come in and help you present the materials to your class. They do about 80% of the teaching, and you do about 20%. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less, but we want you to become comfortable with the materials at the same time your students are. So 4 or 5 days a week, you'd have a volunteer or more in your classroom. And we did it again. And those volunteers would be your content experts. So instead of sitting in a summer program where you're getting 5 days of intensive training, you have a year-long training situation going on. Once you move down and you've been doing this a year or two, we can move into lab support model where you're doing 80% of the teaching, and your volunteers are going to work like college TAs. They're going to help you with projects, help debug code, hit those subjects that are really hard, like in the AP Java course. When you have to teach recursion, it is always good to have another voice of reason in the room, because the way I explain it may not be the same way that a high school student would understand it. So then you would only have 2 volunteers. They'd alternate out. They'd come a couple of days a week, and they'd pick up and help with that. We also do lab support for other people's curriculum. So code.org, Beauty and Joy in Computing, anybody doing the APCS principles curriculums. We provide lab support volunteers to help out with those curriculums as well. And this year we're piloting CS Awesome. So I have a few schools that are going to use CS Awesome instead of the TEALS curriculum for the AP Java course. Questions, comments? Am I going too fast?
No, just a shout out to Dr. Barbara Erickson. She was one of our other presenters earlier this week for CS Awesome and Bloomstone Academy.
Yeah, and I did some of my training when I was teaching with Barb when she was at Georgia Tech. So I really enjoy working with her curriculum and the stuff that she's produced. So we do support partner curriculum, and that's what this slide's all about. We have our own curriculum that we wrote and put out with lesson plans and everything for the CSA course. We also have our own curriculum for an introduction course that has drag and drop programming that moves into Python. But in addition to our curriculum, we support all the ones you see on the screen here. So we help with the CMU CS Academy. We have provided volunteers to support Project Lead the Way, You Teach, Beauty and Joy Computing, like I said, Mobile CSP. Like I said, this slide hasn't been updated, but we have just added in support, and we're going to pilot for the CS Awesome for the Computer Science A, which I'm looking forward to because from what I've heard, it's really great. We have a lot of options for our volunteers and for our classes. So those schools I was talking about in Georgia that are outside of the metro area, a lot of them are doing it remotely. So we have our volunteers come in on our own platform called Neuro. We didn't develop it, we just licensed it. And Mr. Barashango can tell you about it because he actually was one of our remote schools. He had volunteers that came in out of Texas and Florida.
Right.
So they would log in every day. They'd help him with his class. They were really great. They would log in sometimes more than they needed to. They'd be around in the afternoon sometimes to answer questions. We also, as the TEALS program, flew them out to meet the students and do some in-person contact.
Yeah, that was
we like
awesome.
to make sure that yes. I wish I had videotaped a lot of your classes because now I need those examples. But we do that with all of our schools. We pay for our remote volunteers to visit the school at least once a year. Might be a little bit of change this year because we have a lot of schools that are going to be remote due to the COVID situation we're in right now, at least to start with. So, but we definitely want our volunteers to meet their students and their teachers in person at some point. We do in person where they come in. Again, COVID might change that for us this year. I'm still waiting for a lot of my school systems to tell me how we're going to handle volunteers in the classroom. If they're not able to go in person, then we're going to support them remotely. Our volunteers are already geared for that. They know that's what's happening. And I've let our teachers know. So this is just more information about our remote teaching. We do have a lot of schools across the country that are doing remote teaching. We're not only here in Georgia, but we also have some in the Dakotas. We have schools in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. So we actually branched out and we're doing some schools in British Columbia this year. So we have our first international schools.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Our big push this year, and has always been a big deal for us, is diversity and inclusion, but we're formalizing it more this year. So we are including plans and guides to help our teachers build a diverse classroom, help them get diverse enrollment going, do some inclusive teaching. We've always trained our volunteers on leaving their biases and their expert bias and their life biases outside of the classroom, and to teach to a diverse and inclusive way. And Mr. Barashango has been to some of my trainings in the summertime, so he can also talk about that. But this time we're also putting out a diverse plan for each school to fill in. So the school can start working on an activity that gives them ideas on how to recruit more women into their classes, or more minorities into classes that they might not have normally taken. So we try really hard to have our TEALS class reflect the diversity of the school. So if the diversity of the school is, 80% minority, then 80% of the class we would like to see as minority students. If you're a school that is 50% male, 50% female, well, we'd like to see the class be 50% female. We would love for the class to be more than 50% female, but we want to make sure that the classroom is reflective of the community that's being taught in. Our volunteers are found many different ways. You do ask the schools to help us recruit volunteers. So we'll ask the schools to put out on their social media that they're doing TEALS. They need volunteers to send emails to their parents, reach out to their business partners, and make some introductions. We do that because the schools know their communities better than I do. I try really hard to know everything there is to know about Georgia, but there's a lot of school districts in Georgia, and there's a lot of different areas to cover. Our volunteers this year nationally came from 750 companies. So it's not just a Microsoft program. Honestly, the lowest number of volunteers I have in Georgia are from Microsoft, because our offices here are mostly sales. So we don't have as many technical people. That is training. We just announced a campus that they're building in Atlanta, so hopefully we'll see more of that. But this year, VMware was my biggest volunteer source from one company. So training and we are doing training for all of our volunteers again this summer. It's going to be about 40 hours of training for the volunteers. The problem we have this summer is we can't do it in person because of COVID. So everything is going to be exactly what we're doing right now. I'm going to be leading training from this little corner in my office. Hopefully I'll put something nicer in the background, but we're going to also provide online modules for them to go through on their own. So we'll be a combination of asynchronous and synchronous training for our volunteers. And this year we've also created online training for our teachers on the content and how to use our lesson plans. So Mr. Barashango, this is new. You didn't have this option before, but we now have training for our intro course where we take them through a few lessons. We give them videos of the lesson being taught. They can learn it themselves before they go into the classroom. We're doing it with Python, we're doing it with the Snap, Drag and Drop, and we're doing it with the AP Java course.
Okay. We had a question in the chat. Mr. Randy McDonald, he was a TEALS partner. He's at a TEALS partner school last year, but this year he's part of the Pathfinders CS Awesome, and was wondering if he could get TEALS back in the school.
Absolutely. Just because you left TEALS doesn't mean that you can't come back. Are you here in Georgia? Because I could definitely help you there. If you're not in Georgia, I can connect you with the right person that is. For this coming school year, it may not be possible because we've already finalized our volunteer recruitment goals, and getting everything together, but we definitely would be willing to talk about coming back for the school year after this one.
Thank you.
I don't know why the timer's on my slides. I did not put it on there. So I'm learning this virtual life hates me sometimes. So we do this for a lot of reasons, and we survey our students, and we survey our volunteers, and we survey our teachers to make sure that the impact we think we have is what we actually are having. 43% of the students that have taken a CS class had indicated that they see themselves taking more computer science classes in their future. 60% of those students see themselves studying CS in college. 95% of the students think they improved their computer science skills. So that to us is huge numbers. We are, however, want to make sure that we set everybody up for success. So we work as a team. This is a picture of our regional managers meeting, and it's cut off, so you can't see all of us. Don't ask me how I got stuck in the middle of that one. I don't know. But we want a community feel. So here in Georgia, I will hold meetups in person and virtually to invite the volunteers and the teachers to meet each other. We have forums and online community for all of our teachers and volunteers to interact with each other, nationally. The summer training is a huge way for our volunteers to start networking and know each other. We invite our teachers to come to some or all of it. Mr. Barashango was a rock star. He always showed up when I asked him to, so I want to clone him as my best practice teacher.
Hey, I enjoyed it, and I learned a lot myself, so that wasn't a sacrifice.
Yeah, and we definitely don't want teachers to feel like they're out there on their own, because that's the most horrible situation in the world to try to learn and to teach something, is to feel like you don't have support. So I'm here for all of my Georgia schools. Anytime anybody needs me, email, phone call. I even hand out my personal cell phone number. And our team is always available. If I can't answer it, I will find somebody that can. A day in the life for our volunteers. They spend roughly 3 to 5 hours a week working on your class, in addition to the time they spend in your class. So we ask them to participate in the community online. We ask them to prep their lessons that they're going to be leading for you. We also ask them to help prep you. So help do some grading, show you what's correct answers, what's not correct answers, talk you through content you didn't quite get, so you'll be better prepared for it next time you see it. So our volunteers, on average, spend about 5 hours a week on the TEALS program, with about 2 of that being in class and the other 2 to 3 hours being prep work. Our volunteers make a huge impact. They're always around. They love what they do. 90% of our volunteers tell us that they found it rewarding and inspirational to be in the classroom. We usually have about 50% or more come back for a second or third or fourth year. I actually met a volunteer in a virtual meetup last week who's on his 6th year of volunteering with the TEALS program. He's a retiree now. He retired last year, so instead of just showing up for his one and only TEALS class, he sometimes spends the entire day with the teacher and helps with all of their classes. That's not the norm, but he's super engaged. But a lot of our volunteers go way above and beyond what we ask them to do. They love your students. They love the teachers. They love just participating and being in the class. So, and I know everybody doesn't have an opportunity to be in the TEALS program. So outside of TEALS, I still encourage you to go look for those volunteers. See if you can get volunteers from industry to come in and engage with your kids during our code events. Have them do a guest speaking engagement. Have them lecture on a topic one day. Job shadowing for the older students is amazing because they don't have any idea what a computer science job looks like. They either all think they're just going to sit in cubicles and be bored all day, or they're going to build a video game in their mom and dad's basement. It's not going to happen. So what the real world looks like. We encourage field trips to IT departments or to companies that specialize in IT fields. You'd be amazed how many banks have huge IT departments. Career days, if you can get them to come in on career day at your school and talk, that's huge. Some of Mr. Barashanga's volunteers came in and helped do mock interviews and helped do resume building. Getting an industry professional to tell them why it's important to list all those things on those resumes makes your life so much easier when you're trying to teach resume building. Computer science fairs. Invite the local companies to come in and show off what they do. Set up a fair type of activity where the kids can go from table to table and talk about different companies and talk with them. Again, we find our volunteers all over the place, and I'm welcome to share our strategies with you guys anytime if you want to do it on your own. But these are some of the big ones for us. Engaging with the community partners for the schools or school districts. It can be the government offices, it could be the IT department of the DOE. Sometimes, your district offices have a couple people that want to go volunteer in one of the classrooms. And generally, the school board will let them have the time to go do it because it's giving back to the schools. Don't forget about colleges and universities locally. A lot of juniors and seniors in CS courses have the time and the desire to come out and do some volunteering and talk to kids. Business partners. Every school has business partners. You'd be amazed how many of them have IT departments, even if that's not their focus of the company. Everybody has a computer person in the background doing their web page or making sure that their orders are being placed correctly. Social media by far is a huge tool for me here in Georgia. Most of our Georgia volunteers hear about us through Facebook, LinkedIn, or other social media platforms, whether I do the posting or we do it through a national campaign with Microsoft. But a lot of my best volunteers came from social media posts from the schools. Their kids are already at those schools or may one day be at the schools. So have your elementary schools, your middle schools, and your high schools all posting about it. And you'll be amazed how many people come out of the woodwork and say, I want to give back. Work-based learning. Those teachers that are doing work-based learning already have the contacts you need at companies. Tap into that resource, use them. Parents, never overlook your parents. They may not be an IT professional, but they may know someone that is, or they may work for an IT professional.
To mention that about the parents, a lot, some of them didn't even know are IT professionals. They could come in and help out as well, especially if their child is in the classroom or even if they're not in the classroom.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you the truth, parents make the best volunteers because they are already super engaged to your community. Sometimes their kid is in your class or will be taking your class at some point. Somebody once asked me, doesn't that make like a conflict of interest? So far, we haven't run into that being a problem. The students sometimes are a little embarrassed that their mom or dad's in class, but it hasn't been a big issue. The parents sometimes, of elementary school students are willing to come and volunteer at upper levels because they want to build a strong program for their kids to move into. So that's all the slides I have. So I would love to, have conversations or answer questions or share experiences. Like I said, I taught computer science down in Coweta County, which is, if you're not familiar with Georgia, is south of our airport in Noonan, Georgia. And for 13 years, and I've taught a little bit at the college level too. So pick my brain. Use me as a resource. I should have made a slide with my email address and stuff on it. That I'll be happy to share that with you guys. I'll put it in the chat for you.
All right, Tracey at TEALSK12.org.
Yep.
Already there.
Already there. So thank you.
You're welcome.
But I tell everybody, and Mr. Barashango has heard me say this before, I do work for Microsoft TEALS program, but I am first and foremost a parent and a teacher and then a TEALS employee. So if I can help with anything here in especially in Georgia and around Georgia, I'm always super engaged and ready to help.
Okay, so if you have any questions or want to share your experience, I know we had a member that said they were at a TEALS school. So if you've been part of the program, you can share your experience with it, or any questions about TEALS or anything like that. I know Ms. Wilson did bring up a lot of good things that, if you go with the TEALS program, that they definitely are already doing, inclusive in that. And then outside of that, there's still some good things that she shared that you can do. But yeah, we have a teacher, or excuse me, I'm thinking she's a teacher, but Kimberly Hewitt, who says, the TEALS model is great. Teachers and students both benefit from that type of support. So we know that our focus is on the students with those volunteers, trying to help them in the course, get them interested in IT fields potentially, but also for the teacher to help build that content, to help them, see, well, what are the current trends? Because sometimes teachers are just in the classroom and they don't know actually, well, what are the changes? We teaching something from 5-10 years ago. Well, what's out there right now?
And it does change so quickly. Taylor, you were asking if I could talk more about the remote opportunities for volunteering. Absolutely. So what we do is we generally get applications from individuals that want to volunteer, and our volunteer process does have an application. It does have a very lengthy application, but we do that to make sure that we are putting the best volunteers in the classroom as possible. So what we usually do is we look for the volunteer's preference. So we'll ask them if they're interested in remote, and they have 3 options for that question. No, absolutely not. Yes, sure, tell me more. Or yes, that's my primary choice. So if you say yes, that's your primary choice, and I'm going to talk to you about all my remote schools and ask you what you think would be the best fit for you. If you say it's your secondary choice, I'm still going to ask you those same questions. And if you're not interested at all, I may try to talk you around to it, depending on whether I need a remote volunteer. But what we usually do with volunteer placement is I have a one-on-one meeting with every volunteer before they're placed, either in person or virtually. Right now, this year is all virtual. And we talk about the schools we have available, what content they're going to be teaching, the demographics of the school, and then we try to find a school that meets your needs and you meet their needs. So if you really are interested in helping a remote school with a diverse population, I'll look for that. If you're only wanting to help with an intro course, I'll look for a school that has an intro course. If you absolutely want to do Java, then I try to find that for you. So it's very much a best match situation, and it's done on an individual basis. So we want to make sure that everybody is happy, because a happy volunteer is a great volunteer. When I did Mr. Barashango's class, I was looking specifically for teachers that were flexible because he had a unique schedule. He did 3 or 4 different curriculums over the course of the year. So I was looking for volunteers that were willing to do intro for 9 weeks, then do computer science principles for 9 weeks, and then do AP Java second semester, or do video game design. So it took 2 very talented volunteers to handle his course. But I do a lot of that. A lot of my job is matching them.
Mm-hmm. And not just that.
Randy, can you tell me where you're teaching at? I would really love to pick your brain a little bit.
And I was going to say, as far as the volunteers are concerned, definitely, for the teachers and the schools trying to find volunteers, try to find some that's representative of the culture and the people and the races and the demographics at your school as well. So female volunteers, underrepresented, people of color volunteers, try to mix it up. So it's just not just all, one type of volunteer.
And if you are interested in volunteering still, we are definitely still looking for volunteers for this coming school year. I'm interviewing applicants right now and placing them in schools. drop me an email. I'll answer any question you have about volunteering, or you can check out our website. David, Guy, you were asking about working on CS certifications during TEALS. A lot of our teachers are working on that. TEALS specifically doesn't do any training for certification because each state has different certification rules. In Georgia, it's the GACE. In other places, it's the Praxis. It's just several different ways in several different states to do certification. So we don't specifically target that because we'd have to write basically 50 different curriculums for that. But many of the teachers that have been through our program find that it does help them pass, especially the Georgia GACE, because a lot of the stuff that we're covering is things they need to know. And Randy, you're in Oregon. Cool. So you worked with Helen. She's a rock star, or was. She's no longer with the TEALS program, but she was great. But yeah, so I would not have left my classroom for a program that I didn't strongly believe in and think would be a great partnership for teachers. This gave me a much better impact to cover and touch more teachers and therefore more students. So that's why I do this. But I strongly believe in pulling in outside resources. Even when I was teaching, I had friends and colleagues from my days of actually working in industry come in and do guest speaking. So never doubt the value of having that extra person come in, because I don't know why, but I could tell a student the same thing 400 times, but they never believed me. But if that one volunteer came into the classroom and said, oh yeah, we do that, and we do that at work, all of a sudden it was the gospel truth, and I wasn't stupid anymore. So outside perspectives are absolutely great.
So yeah, volunteers, the extra adult in the classroom, first as a teacher, you definitely have to develop that rapport with the students and then help them develop that rapport with the volunteers as well. And if you have, like you said, those good volunteers, they are very passionate about trying to help these young people out here. They are more than willing to do a lot of extra things of which they really don't have to do, or that's outlined for them as TEAL volunteers. They'll go above and beyond, take that extra mile with you and your students. So yeah, that's it was beneficial to my class having them, especially when they came out and did the help them with their resumes and business writings and came out for the mock interviews, and they gave them notes. Okay, well, this and that. Okay, well, it seemed like you ready if you were to be hired for this position or what have you. Gave very good feedback, immediate feedback to them. So, yeah,
I came out that day. I know one of the days they visited, and I was super impressed with how much time they spent with the students. But I found that every time I go to a school and visit, the volunteers all seem to be that way. They're always going above and beyond the students and have a great rapport with them. And like I said, the only thing that usually keeps them from coming back for a second year is the time commitment. So when you change jobs or you have a new baby in the house, TEALS is probably not the best volunteer gig for you. And we know that. So we often encourage people to take a year off if there's a new baby coming into your life, or if you are changing jobs or moving, because it is definitely a time commitment.
And I'll tell you something else that really helped as well was not just being in the classroom, the volunteers being in the classroom, but also that planning time with them. To really pick their brains, of information of which you might not be as comfortable, or just having 3-4 heads just working together, trying to figure things out, coming up with activities that are relevant and, relatable to the students, hands-on items, maybe some unplugged activities or physical computing activities that can relate to the concept that you're teaching. Because even, computer science, you don't want to just be in front of the computer all day, every day. You got to mix it up with some other things to try to help build those concepts and make those connections with the students?
And you've got to make it fun. And a lot of I didn't speak on our curriculum very long or very in depth, but all of our curriculum is project based. And when we train our volunteers, we train them to spend about 25% of their time lecturing or giving out new content, and 75% of their class time doing something active with a student. Because the biggest hurdle with a lot of students that don't see themselves in computer science is making it fun and engaging. If you're just going to sit down and build a calculator app with them, you're probably not going to be as engaged as, say, maybe building a simple game or doing something where they're calculating something that interests them but don't know that they just built a calculator. Our curriculum for the AP Java uses a lot of Pokemon references.
I like the kaleidoscope.
We get tired of
the kaleidoscope.
The kaleidoscope thing, that was cool. So they're drawing. We use some ear sketch. We use some of Georgia Tech's ear sketch in our Python curriculum, which is in our intro course. But we want to do a lot of different things to get their interest. That's the reason we're partnering with really good curriculum providers. We go through their programs, and if it looks like it's engaging and aligns with our beliefs and what we're trying to do with TEALS, that's why we build these partnerships. This is definitely Microsoft funded, but it's not competitive in any way. We work with every company and all over the world, trying to make sure that we give our students the opportunities and our teachers the training they need to do well.
Okay. Do we have any more questions or people that want to ask about experience? And remember, you can, I haven't really had a lot, but you can request to share your video if you want to kind of face-to-face.
Absolutely.
I mean,
if you haven't figured it out, I am the atypical computer science person. I am extremely extroverted. Talk to me anytime.
Say, don't be shy. But yeah, so as far as like remote volunteers, the Neuro platform basically was like the first platform that I used to actually video conference, and having that ability for them to talk to the students individually, or just, see the classroom and share with the whole classroom at once, I thought was very valuable. One other aspect of the Neuro platform they had was being able to share files. You had a whiteboard, that you can utilize and the students can see, or you can do like a one-on-one tutorial virtually with the students. So all of those things. Any other improvements that they've made with Neuro this year?
Yeah, they're always updating and making more improvements. They're working on better breakout sessions and stuff now, so you can have these individual groups with one or more students, or you can have the whole class in a session. The great thing I've always loved about Neuro is the ability to interact with students individually. So, you may have a student that doesn't want to ask a question over the headset to the entire class, but they could go into a breakout room with a volunteer and get one-on-one help. I love the fact that it has a hand-raising button, so you don't overlook a student if they have a question, because I often get very excited with my conversation and I forget to read the chat. The whiteboards and the uploading files, to me as a teacher, is great, because I had tried using Google Hangouts and other things to do some online tutoring and stuff in the past, and it just fell a little bit short of having the tools necessary. So they're building a lot of tools in where students can have a pointer with their name on it, and you can do things where you can say, everybody that thinks it's answer A, place your pointer there, and you can get a real-time kind of thumbs up, thumbs down kind of situation of knowing where your students are. The students, if you give them permission, can actually write on the whiteboards and show problems and interact that way. If they're all being goofballs like high schoolers tend to be, and younger students too, you can lock them down and say, nope, nobody's touching the tools but us and the volunteers. That you can upload PowerPoints and videos in advance, and make sure they work. You don't have to worry about if your link's going to fail, or if, heaven forbid, the district has blocked your access to YouTube that day, because you can go ahead and upload videos, or you can upload your PowerPoints and have them preloaded and ready to go.
Okay. I was going to say that Neuro is the first place where I heard about breakout rooms way before Zoom this year. And then all of a sudden now breakout rooms seem to be the craze. Do you have breakout rooms? Can you do breakout rooms? But one of the other questions I was going to ask is about privacy issues, anything like that. Like, are you allowed to record and the video and things like that, the interactions with the students on Neuro, and how do y'all handle privacy issues with that?
That is definitely a school by school kind of situation. The privacy and media release forms have to be done school by school, and we have to follow the leadership of the district and the school for that. TEALS itself and Microsoft will gather no personal information on students. If we do videotape a class and want to use it for training purposes, we have to get an additional set of consent forms sent out and make sure that every student's parents has seen them. So there's a lot of legalities for us as Microsoft, but inside the school, if we're using it inside the school, it would be a school district level question. Let's see, Taylor, you had another question. Popular challenges for the TEALS volunteers. Actually, that is a very great question. I have found that the biggest challenges for volunteers is based on their age group. So if they're relatively new to industry and they just got out of college, they have a better understanding of what a high school classroom looks like, and they're a little more relatable to the students and the issues that might come up based on that. Older volunteers that have been out of the classroom 10, 15, 20 years have a little learning curve on what a high school classroom looks like now. Definitely students are different, and they talk different and behave differently than even when I was in high school. Mr. Barashenga is laughing at me, trying to be very nice in saying that. We also run into a few misconceptions. If they came from a background where they were middle class or upper middle class, and they're trying to work in a inner city or a Title I school, there's a little bit of disconnect on what the students have available to them as far as technology goes at home. So we have to work a little bit about that. It's mostly misconceptions about what the students are going to be like. So we have a few that run into I didn't think it'd be this much time commitment, or it would be this hard. But for the most part, it's just adjusting their expectations, making sure that their expectations fit the demographics of the classroom. We have a few volunteers here in Georgia and across the country that didn't do high school in the United States. Their education came in a foreign country. And so we do a little educating on what a high school classroom in the U.S. looks like, give them a little bit of idea of what they might expect, because that sometimes is a culture shock. I ran into that with some of my exchange students when I was teaching myself, that they couldn't believe that the American kids would talk to a teacher the way they do. So things like that. For the most part, those are the things I usually run into. Communication, teaching them to communicate with a high schooler takes some time, and reminding them that the teacher's always in charge, because a lot of these people are project managers at work, and they are type A personalities. The teacher is ultimately in charge of that classroom because they're legally responsible for all the students and their grades, and they have to learn to follow the teacher's lead.
Right. So, the volunteers to me are like partners. But as a teacher, and I'm sure, if you're a veteran teacher, then you already know this, but you definitely have to make sure that your classroom management is up to par. because you don't want to really bring a volunteer in if your class is wild, so you have to get that under control. Hopefully you do that at the beginning of the school year. And then it'll be a lot better experience for the volunteers, and they'll feel as though they'll be able to really help a lot more instead of wasting time with discipline issues and things like that. And, don't ever leave the volunteer in the room by themselves. Don't ever do that.
It's okay if you have to step out for 2 minutes, but they're not a substitute teacher. Right. So please don't leave our volunteers on their own for a long period of time. Taylor, a lot of our volunteers do learn a lot about teaching, but they also get, especially our younger volunteers, companies are partnering with us to have their entry-level software engineers come and do it, because they're just teaching them how to stand up in front of a group and speak effectively. So they're getting public speaking, they're learning how to lead teams, and they're getting to build their confidence. Because I assure you, if you can explain it to a high school student, you can explain it to your peers at work. I used to manage the schools in Charleston, South Carolina. A company there called Blackbaud partnered with us and provided about a dozen volunteers, and they were using it as part of their onboarding training for some of their junior developers that they wanted to move up to more of a management type position, because it gave them those skill sets they needed to effectively lead meetings and to stand up and give presentations and learn how to do that effectively. I hate to say that engineers lack a few of those skills, but sometimes they do. And especially if you're coming straight out of college, a lot of times you don't have the confidence to lead those buildings, those kind of situations. If you're a college student, we do have some volunteers that are seniors in college. I tell them to put it on their resume as, instructional content. They have led instruction, they have public speaking, they have done teaching, and it helped, just anything to help them get some of those interpersonal skills on their resume.
And
we do have quite a few volunteers that want to be teachers in the future, so this lets them practice that too before they commit to, leaving industry and becoming a teacher. So I always tell my volunteers, it's the best of teaching. You get to do all the fun stuff without all the headaches of the administrative stuff. You don't have to worry about parent conferences. You don't have to worry about paperwork. You don't have to worry about going to staff meetings and all the standardized testing and stuff that goes along with that. You get to just be a teacher.
And I'll say that the trainings, Mrs. Wilson does a very good job, and TEALS does a very good job with sharing different pedagogical strategies to utilize in the classroom. Now, one that I found very, very interesting was the one about implicit bias and things like that. So, I really enjoyed those presentations and learning opportunities about implicit bias. Again, whether it's race, gender, sexual identification, what have you, your economic background or status. I thought that was very profound and very beneficial.
Yeah, and we also try to help with volunteers understanding how to deal with students that have IEPs or 504s. While, they won't ever have access to the paperwork necessarily, the teacher's going to have to, clue them in a little bit. So we teach them things like, don't ever go up to a student and say, oh, this is easy, because just because it's easy for you does not mean it's easy for them. And you might disengage that student because they might internally say to themselves, oh, well, I must be stupid because you said this was easy. So, we do a lot of stuff like that. I throw my poor kid under the bus all the time. I have a dyslexic son, so I use him as an example all the time about misconceptions, because the way he learns and the way I teach are nowhere near the same way. And that was a rude awakening for me when he was little, and I'm sitting here in a classroom going, I can't help my own student. I'm my own son. I'm having to pay somebody else to tutor my son. That was a real eye-opening experience for a visual learner to have a child with a visual processing problem. So Mr. Bearshango laughs, but I do. I throw him, that poor child, under the bus.
Yeah, that's why I'm laughing. Not because he's dyslexic. So I don't want anybody to misinterpret.
Yeah. He is a senior. He's going to be an incoming senior this year. So all those stories are fixing to come to an end because we are dual enrolled in college, and I have he has a straight A average in high school. So
awesome.
A lot of work, but we got him through.
So don't forget.
I imagine Barb Erickson's kids feel probably the same way because I have one of her old textbooks and all of her children are in the pictures. They're adults now.
Right. I've seen some of those at some of her workshops and everything. But yeah. Oh, actually, shoot, I still have ordered her books years ago.
That book. Does anybody else have any questions? Anything I can answer? Obviously, I'll just tell you my entire life story if you let me keep talking.
So, where do you see like TEALS going in the next 5 years? What's the goal or what have you?
Well, our goal has always been to increase teacher capacity. We had a big change up a little bit in the Microsoft philanthropy section, so we're looking at employability skills more. So I think you'll see us supporting, I hope, and this is just my opinion, I don't know for sure all of it, more things that lead to job skills. So right now we're supporting a very small amount of curriculum. So I'm hoping that we're going to be adding some curriculum to our repertoire and not just be doing the AP courses, but also maybe some of the ones that lead towards certifications or job readiness skills. We are very much still looking at accessing those areas that don't have a TEALS program. We want to do a lot of targeted growth, make sure we're getting those rural schools, getting the schools that need us. We are working on limited budgets, obviously. This year's been a little strange for all of us. So we kind of grew in place this year and didn't do as much expanding as we normally would have. But I've been with TEALS since January of 2016. When I started, there was 11 employees, so we're at 40 now. And we were only in a handful of states, and we're in 27 now. When I started in Georgia, there were 0 schools. So, and I managed all of the Southeast at that point. So I think you're going to see us expanding into places that you don't see us on that map now. You're also going to see us wanting to help schools that have been with us multiple years add an additional teacher or grow the programs. So it's not always going to be about new schools, but how can we enhance the programs at our existing schools too?
Okay. So because of now that a lot of learning is going virtual, does Microsoft TEALS or Microsoft, if you know, do they have any plans of trying to reach a lot of the students or what have you that might not have that access at home, that technology access at home?
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge that we're facing right now. I don't know the official plan for that. I know they're talking about it. I'm not high enough up the food chain, so to speak, to have insight on what the plan going forward is, but we're definitely having those conversations. I think you'll see a lot of movement in that way. I'm not authorized to talk about it, and I'm not usually in those meetings. I am a lone TEALS person here in the state of Georgia, as you well know, so I just wait until they tell me what our plan is and do my best to support the teachers here locally. So this is the first year I've only had to manage schools in one state, so the growth in Georgia has been enough that I don't have to travel to other states, which is great. And like I said, I want to see us getting into more of those rural areas. I know that South Georgia needs us, but we haven't quite made the right connections there.
Okay. So for teachers who would like to implement the TEALS program in their schools, how can they go about finding out more information or trying to sign up or fill out the application and things like that?
So applications for this coming school year are closed. We will open applications for the following school year, 21-22. Yeah. And probably around December. If you want to talk with me individually, feel free to drop me an email. I'll be happy to tell you all the ins and outs, to answer all your questions individually. If you're not in Georgia, I probably will introduce you to the regional manager that handles your area, because they'll be able to answer specific questions. If you're not ready for those kind of conversations yet, always check out our website. It's off the Microsoft site, so you could do Microsoft.com/TEALS, or I think they took the other one down, but
yeah, the other one, the TEALS K12.org, that jumps to Microsoft.
I think it still works, but we tried to rebrand to make sure that we're off the Microsoft page, so you can definitely find us through the Microsoft page. Otherwise, my email, the email extension was our website before we were rebranded. We used to have a cute little logo. Now we have a Microsoft logo. It's okay. With growth, these things happen. But we will start putting out promotional materials. I can send PDFs out. I can send out the school brochures to anybody that's interested. But I find that the easiest way generally is just to jump on a phone call. I'll be happy to sit down and walk you through everything, get you the materials you need for your administrators, or if you're an administrator, I'll get you the materials you need to show your teachers. I'm always happy to come, if you're local, to come out to your school and talk to a group of you, or if you want to just jump on a phone call. I'm on Teams pretty much 7 out of 8 hours a day doing some sort of meeting, so I'm more than happy to do that anytime.
Okay. Well, can you just go ahead and repost your contact information for those
Sure.
that are still here? And like say, when I saw I was moderating the session, I was just like grinning from ear to ear, because I was like, oh, Mrs. Wilson, she is one of my buddies right there. Has a passion for helping these students by trying to connect computer science teachers with professional, volunteers from the professional sector, from the business sector, so that they can help bridge that connection between what the students are doing in the classroom and what actually is being expected of them out there in the workforce. So
yeah, I was, as you know, when you sent me that email, I'm like, yes, let's talk. I was trying to track you down. Cell phone crash. I lost his contact information. So.
All right. Do we have any other questions? I mean, there's still a few minutes left to the session, about 9 minutes before the next. Remember, we still have networking that happens at the end of the day. So we have closing announcements and then networking that starts, I think, from like 5:30 or so to 6 o'clock and everything. And I stayed around and met a couple of real interesting people. So, that's also fun as well. But yeah. So any other questions or comments? Definitely, like I said, I wanted to thank Mrs. Wilson and TEALS for coming and helping us out and partnering with us during the summit. So yeah, this was awesome.
Anytime. So you guys let me know if anybody in this meeting has a need for me to speak on something or need some help with something, just contact me.
Okay, and she did.
I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, yeah. And if you see, her contact information is in the chat window. So there you go. All right, well, I guess we could just chill if nobody has any questions. So, yeah, we got to see. Oh, you're welcome. David Guy says thank you. You're welcome. Elena.
Well, thank you guys for coming, because I love that you took time out of your day to come listen to me. So still kind of floors me all these years later that people want to hear me talk.
So yeah, we're getting a lot of thanks in the chat. So definitely thank you for coming and sharing, and thank you attendees for coming. Don't forget to fill out the attendance form if you haven't done so already. If you would like an attendance certificate, I did put that in the chat as well. You can email gtconstellations at georgiatech.edu, so gatech.edu. If you take pictures or screenshots and post it on social media, I put that in the chat as well. Hashtag Constellation Summit, and then, we still have another day tomorrow. So this has been a jam-packed summit for these last 2 days, and including tomorrow for 3 days total. I've had a lot of fun moderating, learning, doing some of the activities just like the attendees. So I have I have 3 screens up. That's why sometimes you'll see me looking around, and I also have my phone. So I'm like multitasking, trying to do all these things, looking at this and that.
I wish I had more free time during the day this week to attend more of the panels. I keep trying to pop into a few here and there between my meetings and things, so that next time I will just block my days off where I can participate fully.
And so, I'll say this was like a blessing in disguise, being able to do this virtually, because this started out just being like the Constellations Center at Georgia Tech, along with the Atlanta Public School teachers, that are part of our partnership program. And we were so it was probably be at max maybe 11, 12 people. And we now have grown, I think, over 500 participants, including presenters and things like that. So all of you all that registered for the summit, and all of you all that are in attendance, and all the presenters, we thank you all very, very much for helping us out. I hope you've been getting a lot of useful, beneficial information that you can take back to your classroom. If you're in the classroom, if you're administrators, we thank you for being here as well. Hopefully you'll see the importance of computer science education in the CTAE program. And I know all computer science teachers aren't in the CTAE program, but how beneficial all of those things are, and not just the core classes, which are of course beneficial. Math is life. I always have to say that. So this where we are going, literacy is not just about reading and writing anymore. It's about computer literacy as well. So very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you have some free time, Mr. Barashango, I'd love to hear more about what Constellations is doing and how I can help. Because
oh, definitely. And I see actually my boss is in here. And she even mentioned that, for us to, we need to find some ways that we can collaborate in the near future. So not, let's try to get this thing going on, because I think both of our goals ultimately kind of tie into each other anyway,
Yeah, and we have some tie-ins with Georgia Tech anyway because of the ear sketch and our curriculum and stuff, but I'm always looking for more ways to connect with you guys out at Georgia Tech. My brother's an alumni and stuff too, so.
Awesome.
My non-dyslexic son, the other one that doesn't get talked about as much, has informed me that he's going to Georgia Tech.
Hey, so. Cool.
he's a ninth grader, so we'll see if he sticks with that. But right now, that's his ultimate goal, is to be a software engineer and go to Georgia Tech.
Cool. Let's see. Any other traffic in the chat? We still have about 3 minutes left. Well, you're welcome.
You need to.
Oh, I'm going to say you're welcome to anybody that's saying thank you to me. I mean, this really has been a blessing to me to be able to do this.
I love doing this stuff. So anytime I can talk about, well, TEALS and just computer science education in general, I love doing. And I agree with Elena. You need to make T-shirts with your phrase on there.
Math is life. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
Of course, maybe we should make it computer science is life.
Right. Well, I'll tell you one reason that I really enjoyed computer science, or how I first got into it, was kind of through, HTML coding or what have you. But what I liked about it was I thought it married two sides of myself. I'm from a mathematical, logical background, but not only that, I'm also from an artistic background. So it just married those two halves. And I was like, oh, computer science. Yeah, that's nice. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of I've had administrators look at me like I was crazy when I tell them how creative computer science is, because they don't realize it until they see it. But you were talking about the kaleidoscope thing, and then we have Ear Sketch, and we have all these very interactive web pages and all the software that makes all this great art. But it's extremely creative, in my opinion. Mm. And I'm not artistic in the general form of way people think about art, but I can be in computer science.
Mm. All right. So we gonna say goodbye. So y'all can go ahead and take a break and get ready for the next part of the summit. Like I said, the summit is now over. They have some announcements on the live stage. And we still have the networking, so you can meet people randomly from all over the summit that are from all over the world, actually, not just in America now, but we have participants from all over the world. Thank you very much. Please come back to tomorrow as well, and hopefully, Mrs. Wilson, if you have time and allowed in your schedule, you can hop in on some other sessions that are going to occur tomorrow.
That's my plan. So we'll see how things work out.
All right.
And you stay in touch personally so we can hang out.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We're going to try to start working on how we can collaborate with TEALS and Constellations. So we're going to get right on that. So thank you. Appreciate you. Love you.
Thank y'all for having me.
Yes, ma'am.